Why are you here?
Why am I here? It was it's stop fracking, basically. It's love for the planet that we're on and trying to wake people up to the dangers that fracking presents to our planet. Our water supplies, the air pollution, things like that. It's trying to spread the word that we don't want it in our country.
And what inspired you to protest against fracking? Was it a particular...
Well, I live in Sussex, for a start, and I heard about fracking as a method of getting gas and just totally didn't like the idea. So when I heard that it was going to happen, then yeah, straight away I'm going to be here saying no, this isn't all right, you know.
And what's not right about fracking? What is the issue of fracking?
Well, basically it can poison the water table, which will make our drinking water unsafe. They're using a lot of chemicals which can get into the water system and then cause people to be unwell, and animals, and you can't grow food. But I don't know that about the food. I'm just imagining that will happen, but it's known to affect the cattle and to affect children in America and Australia.
What is your main concern about fracking then?
My main concern about fracking, I have a lot, but I think the main one is they put millions of gallons of water and chemicals into the ground and only get approximately half the amount back. So somewhere down the line, the earth is polluted. It will come out eventually. If you look at evidence from other countries, it's already gas in the water, seeping out into the water table. Whole communities are going into early dementia, like in their 40s. Whole communities of people. And I believe it to be a direct result of gases and chemicals being pumped into the ground and not regulated properly, or not regulated at all.
I know that the fracking, the water can go into the ground, and sure, it's meant to be contained and all the rest of it, but I know the stuff is toxic.
Can you explain why you're opposed to fracking?
It seems like a really inefficient way of producing not very much energy at huge environmental cost, and the fact that it's banned in so many other countries indicates that it should probably be banned here as well.
And what are the environmental costs?
Well, as far as I understand it, could be damage to the ecosystems, could be poison to the water supply, could be, it's all drilling underground, which is obviously so much less efficient and more damaging than something like a wind turbine, which you could just take down. You can't really reverse drilling.
Tell me why you're here.
I'm here because I live in East Sussex, so it's really local, and I was doing anti-road stuff, and this seems to be linked to that. And also it's the right thing to do. I mean, they're contaminating our water supply, and it's very possible to feel the effects of that every day being here. So, yeah, it's scary stuff.
It's obviously going to have dangers to the whole world.
And what are the main risks of fracking?
Main risks, I think, personally, I'd say water, the pollution to our water supply.
8 million gallons of water potentially per well after they've more than fracked it once, and maybe 1,800 to 2,000 of those alone on the south coast. That is an enormous amount of water, not just to waste, but to store, being a potential chemical threat to the whole country.
Number one concern, they're injecting the planet with nasty things, and it's not doing good.
These chemicals are going to be in the ground for hundreds of thousands of years to come, and the chances of them leaking along the different planes, levels of rock into the water system are very, very real.
I don't know what it's going to take for people to actually realise that everyone is affected by the contamination of water, and it affects the air. It's the dew in the ground in the mornings, it's in the vegetables that grow from the ground. It's not just one thing, it's sort of all interconnected.
Yeah, it's just so dangerous.
Has anyone actually been harmed, though, as a result of fracking?
There are lots of people who have been harmed A lot of people are not allowed to disclose. They have gagging orders and things are placed on them. But we had a list on A4 paper, which was 105 feet long down here, of families and individuals in America that have been harmed by it. And we put all these sheets end to end, 105 feet long, of people who died, people who've had dementia, people who have suffered with lesions, kidney failures, central nervous system, nausea, nosebleeds. There's loads and loads of things that are put down to this.
Has anybody been harmed as a result of fracking?
Yes. Go on the net, have a look. Yes, lots of people have.
Has anyone been harmed by fracking?
Well, it really depends how you define harm. There's certainly it's damaged a lot of people's livelihoods, and it's caused a fair amount of tremors and disruption, and I'd call that harm to people's lives. Yeah.
It's done damage to people's homes in the US and in Lancashire where it's already started, but I'm not sure of the extent of that damage.
And how many people have died in America?
Off the top of my head, I have no idea. I haven't got that information, and I won't pretend that I know. But if you watch any of the films that are available, the Gasland ones, and there's some other really, really good ones out there, Fractured Future, and there's one called Four Corners, which I watched recently. Those tell of communities, whole communities that are ill with cancers, and it's not how many have died so far, it's how many are likely to die within the next 10 years.
How did you come across that information about fracking, about the dangers of fracking to water contamination? Is that something you've read, or is that a film?
Yeah, I've researched it on the internet, seen quite a lot of interviews, and here as well they've done evenings of showing footage of people, families that are personally affected by it in Australia and America. And Radio 4, I heard about it first.
Because there has been a bit of a discussion about whether about the gas landfill in particular, about whether that gas coming out was a result of fracking, or whether the gas was coming out of pipes before. I don't know, are you aware of that sort of discussion about?
Yeah, I am aware of that discussion. I think it's kind of irrelevant given all the other factors and issues involved in fracking, like whether there's pure methane gas or whatever coming out of your tap. That's an extreme thing to happen, and I don't think we should get distracted with debating whether that was real footage or not. Just focus on the people that are suffering because of fracking.
It shouldn't even really be up for debate. If there's any doubt at all, it's our water supply. Nothing is more important than that. Nothing.
And when did you become concerned about fracking?
When I found out about it.
And was it something you read that made you concerned?
No, I don't read newspapers. It was friends, and just seeing bits of pamphlets and so on about it. That's all.
We got rid of our telly 2 years ago, and I'd just been trawling the internet, and I was finding stuff that was making me sort of sway towards that the government's been lying. I was looking into JFK, looking into September the 11th, and the London bombings, and then I found this guy, Ian Crane, who just kept firing information, and that made me really interested to see that the government's lying. In my eyes, we're being lied to a lot, we're being conned, having the police used against us. Things in the world aren't right.
When did you begin to be concerned about these issues? Was there a sort of particular moment in your life when you sort of...
After I came the first weekend to have a look at what was going on and talk to people, as soon as I got home, I went on the computer and started researching into every part of it. It wasn't, some people were just talking about the dangers to the water table, the aquifer and things. But I found that when I started looking into it, there was as much of a threat from airborne, the fumes of this, what's coming out of there, spillages on the road. Some of these chemicals can absorb themselves straight through your skin.
The people who give the facts out aren't giving the facts out about this subject. If everyone would read the facts, or could read the facts, my grandma and my grandfather They read the Daily Mail religiously, every single day. I said to my granddad last week where I am. I said, I'm in Balcombe at the protest. And he said, yeah, that's a load of rubbish, don't worry about that. They frack for real, everything becomes cheaper. You get cheaper gas, that's a good thing. I said, Grandad, put the Daily Mail down and look at the facts. If you go on the internet, there's website after website that gives you the facts about this.
And these things don't get reported in the news. We're very unfortunate here with the media coverage we've had from the main sort of stream news. Has been very little. You know, they've said we've gone as of 3 weeks ago. We were gone to most people, and I think it's just covering it up so that the news doesn't get out there to people.
There's been debates in the news. Some people say it's safe, some people say it's not safe. Gasland in particular, there's been questioned about whether the gas that came out of the tap was a result of fracking or whether it was because of for other reasons. How do you decide what to believe when you read?
Intuition, and if you watch Gasland 2, they go into that more about the theory that the methane was already present in the water, and they kind of go into that more in the second film about that.
Okay, I mean, I've read stuff that's saying that it's contaminating. I've read stuff that's saying it's not contaminating. What's convinced you that it is contaminating?
Well, I've read stuff that says it has and stuff that says it hasn't. I have no proof either way. But I'm certain that over a period of time, if you put something in the ground, it will find its way to the surface. That may be because in 50 years' time, they come and drill again.
How do you decide what to believe?
Well, I decide what I want to believe based on the facts that are out there. I mean, anybody who is anti-fracking has got all the facts in front of them, and they're quite willing to share those facts with you. Anybody who is pro-fracking will not give you the answers to the questions that are being asked. They won't tell you how much water. They won't tell you where the waste is going. They won't tell you of the dangers. They won't even tell you of the mixtures of chemicals they're putting down there.
And I know myself, you know, like one thing that makes me not believe them is they say that the Ashdown forest is protected and so on and so forth, and the green belt and all the rest of it. And they're going more and more for development.
There has been articles and reports saying that it's safe. There's been articles saying that it's dangerous and it can contaminate water. How do you know what to believe?
Well, I think there's always a certain amount of vested interest if you're going to read material that's been put out by scientists that are sponsored by organisations or by a government.
The politicians aren't straight.
Why has the government allowed it to happen?
Why have the government allowed it to happen? Again, I think that's all part of it. It's the government and the companies are one in the same, and the banks. They're all controlled by the banks. And basically, we don't have a government that can make its own mind up anymore.
Why do you think the government is in favour of fracking?
In favour, I think it's too many ties with Quadrilla themselves. I think there's backhanders in the government. I think there's a lot of corruption when you look at America, the way things are with corporations and government. It's not good. The government don't really have much to say. The corporations have more control, I think. And that's the way I can see UK going if we're not careful. The people need to come together and make a stand against the government. You've got 82% of Balcombe residents against fracking, and the government don't hear that. They just carry on. And I think there's a lot of incentives through backhanders for the government that's creating the problem.
You can follow the money trail. There's conflicts of interest. With Lord Brown being the chief business advisor to the Tory party, and he's also chairman of Quadrilla. And it smells of corruption to me.
The big companies with all the money have the power, the government sponsorship, the government backing. A lot of the government people who have the power to back it have other interests in the oil companies, like they may have been on the board, the executive board of them. So they all have other interests. It's not for the best of the country that they've been voted for. They've been voted in, or they haven't been voted in, but they're there to do a job protecting us, looking after our best interests. And I don't feel the government do that.
Demand is going up, existing facilities are being run down, and there's fears of electricity shortages. surely the government's responding to the real needs of the people for energy.
There are other means. I mean, there are solar panels and things that people can use. There is wind, as we can feel now. Nobody's looking into doing anything with them, and I think they should do.
Are you against gas per se? As a form of energy.
Well, I've been living in a caravan, and I really like having a gas bottle. That's how much I've got, and I'm quite minimal with it and more control with it. And then for heat, I use wood, and that dries everything out as well, and heats water so you can wash and clean everything. I don't think people should be living necessarily the way that they are in a house. It's really inefficient and a waste of fuel. And that's quite a big thing to try and create a change in. But personally, I use a small amount of gas, and if I was living in a house, it would completely do my head in the amount of fuel that's used. So that's why I've made the choice I have.
Wood burners are quite popular, actually, where I'm from, Otley. Are wood burners the way forward?
Yeah, wood burners are definitely the way forward, yeah. I think, definitely. I mean, I don't know about the amount of wood, whether there's enough wood for everybody, There's a lot of people now. But solar energy, definitely. Heating up water and having pipes that are heating your home and things like that. Brilliant.
I think it's now is a point that we need to start looking at alternative energy, green, renewable energy, sort of alternative energy. It's I think oil has had its day. We need to look at different forms of powering things, really. Hemp has incredible uses for making plastics, which shows we don't need oils to make plastics and things like that.
So aside from the risks of fracking, are you against the use of gas itself?
I guess we've become dependent on gas. I live in a camper van. I use bottled gas in my van. Since being here, it's made me want to get a wood burner in the van and start burning wood to fuel my van, to warm and to cook on. I guess we're in that situation at the moment where we've become dependent on these things. It's trying to retrain ourselves to look at things a bit differently, I guess, see what alternatives there are that we can use, and it might not be as easy as cooking on gas. Gas is brilliant to cook on, but it's learning to live in harmony with the planet and the earth, I think.
Because some people are opposed to the use of gas as a source of energy itself, regardless of the particular form of fracking and the harms of fracking. What's your view of gas itself?
Well, I think gas, I think it's not ideal, obviously. I think it's obviously not a renewable energy, and it's not, it's kind of on a par with oil, really, I suppose.
Basically, there are very many good other alternative sources of energy. It's just not necessary, because it's so harmful.
In terms of gas itself as a source of energy, should we stop using gas?
Yes. Yeah, we should be looking towards renewables, Why aren't we doing that more? Because there's no money in it. And there's this myth about wind farms being unattractive or a blight on the landscape. I mean, who actually has these views? I think they're beautiful.
So, should we stop using gas?
Ideally, in an ideal world, yeah. I think, but in our pursuit of gas, I think that we shouldn't be turning to alternatives like this.
Yeah, we should at least be swinging towards the direction of renewable energy sources like solar panels, wind farms, rather than spending so much money, so much effort for this kind of way of creating energy. It doesn't seem to make any sense.
So you're not in favour of leaving it in the ground? Because there is a debate about whether you should actually leave the fossil fuels in the ground.
We should try and leave as much as we can. I understand that we can't just switch overnight. We've got too much of an infrastructure in place, and we need to build another one. or start building another one to prepare for something else, and start running down the amount of fossil fuels that we take out of the ground. We're leaving the ground empty, you know.
So do you think we should leave the gas in the ground?
Everything that we need as humans is available for us to reach, and I believe that nature's locked all this away for a very good reason. It's deep underground, hidden away, because it's not good, and we shouldn't be digging things that have been buried that far underground for a reason, digging them up to burn. It's just pushing the whole fossil fuel industry further, and it's going to run out. We need to scrap the fracking and now start with it now looking like it's going to run out. Now start looking into alternatives.
Before it runs out, before it's got to the point and we've run out, we should develop something that's going to carry us on.
In 20, 30 years from now, if they've exhausted what they're going to take out by fracking, what are they going to do then? There's nothing in place. We need to be looking now for what's going to be happening in 30, 40 years from now.
It was always going to run out when we first started using it, when we first started using coal, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Yeah. Why shouldn't we just carry on using it a little bit more? Why now?
Fair point.
Is there a danger that we can jump the gun, if you like, and start using more expensive forms of energy and not take advantage of the cheap form of energy, especially at a time when we are suffering from, a lack of economic competitiveness in the global market, and it'll affect our levels of economic growth?
I honestly don't believe that these fuels are cheap anyway. I mean, you look at the price of diesel and petrol nowadays. That's doubled in the last 3 years.
At the moment, we're currently using fossil fuels: gas, oil, coal, and any transition to a future energy source is going to take time. Do you think we should continue to explore more for gas and oil, or do you think we should stop further explorations?
I think we should stop further exploration. Obviously, we'll still need to use what we're using, but instead of putting money into finding more, put the money into what we know we can do with the sun, or with the wind, or with the tide. It's proven that these work. So instead of using the money to explore for more, we should put the money into making these work more efficiently. And then when we can stop using the fossil fuels that we're using at the rate that we're using them.
But some people argue that if there is gas in the ground, why don't we use it if it's cheaper?
I don't see any definitive proof that it's cheaper. And why would cheap always be better? If cheap's destroying the planet, then it's not cheaper. It's a lot more costly.
America's discovered, the fracking gas has enabled it to produce cheap energy.
Interesting.
Yeah, but at what cost?
From it sounds really, really expensive with all the equipment that needs to be used, and I've heard arguments that it'll push energy prices up, if anything. See, I'm not an expert and I don't know.
So is price a consideration? Is it, if it was really cheap, would that be good?
Well, cheaper. There's long-term cheap and there's short-term cheap. I think this might be a cheap short-term solution to our gas needs at the moment. But in the long run, using wind power and wave power, even though you have to make the initial investment of the material, of the cost of the materials, it's cheaper in the long run. So we should be thinking in terms of 20 to 30 years and not just in terms of 2 to 5.
But hasn't America discovered fracking as a cheap source of energy? Hasn't that reduced the cost of energy in America?
It may have, but at what overall cost? I mean, you're looking at a totally different land mass out there. They have huge areas with hardly any population in them. We are a very populated country. So to do it here, we're doing it, wherever we do it, it is in a populated part of the country. You cannot do it on the scale where we would be able to rely on it, because you would just wipe people out. There's not enough. We can't pull enough of it out of the ground in this country to make ourselves self-sufficient.
What about the cost of electricity? Some people say that gas could be a cheap source of energy.
That is not true in the long term because of the concept of induced demand. It's a bit like with the roads, these things. If for me, it's not even important because it's a health hazard, so that's kind of outweighing the economic crisis issue. The environmental crisis is more important. Yeah.
And what is the environmental crisis?
The culture of abuse that's dependent on industry and the government just wanting to exploit as much of the land base as they can. It's almost like they have a death urge.
Whether, I know some people would say global warming's all a conspiracy and things, but I think this day and age it's about time we start caring for the planet we're on, and the fuels we're burning and the way we consume things on the earth. It's all interlinked, I think, with waking up and learning what we've got, how beautiful this earth is, and how we need to look after it.
Have you always been concerned about the issues, or was there a time when you became concerned? Was it a sort of turning point when these issues became more important to you?
I guess I didn't really feel the way I feel now when I was in my early 20s. Now I'm 32 now, so let's say possibly the last 5 years has been the complete swing. But I've always had the thought in the background of my head that things aren't right, the world's dying, it's a bad place, It's not. It could be so lovely, everything can be so lovely, but it's not.
Was it a turning point in your life, would you say, that when you got involved in this, was it a sort of conscious decision that you made about what you're going to do in your life?
No, I just kind of followed my intuition here. I really did. I didn't think it through, but then being here is just very clearly the right thing to do, and that's so tangible a feeling when you're here. So it's like, yeah, that's all I know really.
What inspired you to come along? You mentioned it was your first protest.
Yeah, first protest. I saw something Occupy posted on Facebook about the Reclaim camp being set up on the Wednesday a few weeks ago. I got a really intense feeling in my chest. I needed to be here. The moment I saw it, I got an intense feeling in my chest. It didn't really go till I got here. I wanted to come Saturday night for the march from Balcombe on the Sunday. I didn't make it till Sunday night, but I came here. I've not left. I gave everything I've had in Epsom and decided this is where I needed to be. So.
And is this your first protest?
No, it's not. I was involved in the anti-roads thing that went through Hastings, the Crowhurst, Bexhill Hastings Link Road, trying to stop that being built. George Osborne's plans to build 190 new roads across the UK starts in Hastings, where I live, where I stay. So yeah, that was my thing I did earlier this year. Yeah.
And what's the connection between this and the roads?
Well, because governments are trying to bring in more roads because they want to bring money to developers and industry and basically just create more small villages and cities and completely carve up the countryside. They need more lorries to transport shed loads of radioactive materials and what have you into sites like these, which completely destroy the roads. So they need to build more roads. That's just my theory. But I think it's all linked, So it's just important to be here, I think.
If everyone had the facts from the government or the people that are giving out the information, they would, in my eyes, they would see that it's not right, and then they would change their opinion. Say there was a referendum on fracking and everyone had all the facts, and it swayed to be, no, we don't want it. The politicians would have to go with that. But there's not a referendum on it. Not everyone has all the facts. And the likelihood is not everyone would even turn up to vote.
The issue of democracy. We've got an elected government. The government's decided to go ahead with this. You're engaging in sort of direct action. What democratic mandate have you got? Is there a danger that you're being undemocratic in this?
Well, if I can just say that last week, when the issue came up about Syria, that David Cameron was 100% sure he was going to get that passed so that they could do what he wanted to do, go in and go to war with Syria, basically. but he was stopped by the people. Enough people made a difference, and I think that if we do have a democracy in this country, we should be able to do the same thing. We should be able to write to, or email to our MPs and get them to raise their concerns and maybe have a vote on this. I don't see what the difference is. Why we can't have a vote on fracking. It's as controversial as anything else that's going on in the country at the moment.